We are on chapter 6. Fang hits town. Fudge looked at his new bed a lot, liked his new bed a lot. There was just one problem. He fell out of it every night. By the fourth night, my mother and father got smart. They pushed the bed against the wall and surrounded the other side with chairs. Now there was no place for Fudge to fall. But every morning my mother found him curled up in one of the chairs. My father said he could have saved the money since Fudge was so happy sleeping in old chairs. On Saturday, we had to go to the dentist. He wanted to check Fudge's mouth again to make sure everything healed all right since his flying experience. Dr. Brown is an old friend of my father's. They went to school together. He's always saying he takes good care of me and Fudge because we are chips from off the old block. The old block being my father. His office was on the other side of the park. It's near Madison Avenue. My mother said we'd make a day of it, and wouldn't that be fun? I'd rather go to the movies with Jimmy Fargo, I told her. But we'll have such a good time, my mother said. The three of us will go out for lunch, and then we'll go get some new shoes for you and Fudge. I've been out to lunch with Fudge, I reminded her. He's growing up, Peter. He knows how to behave now. I'd still rather go to the movies with Jimmy. Well, you're coming with me, and that's that. I wasn't looking forward to my day. And Saturday morning is always the best day of the week. Every Saturday morning, I clean out Dribble's bowl. Sometimes, if Fudge is very good, I let him watch. I do it in the bathroom. First, I take Dribble out of his bowl, let him crawl around the tub. I'm afraid to put him down on the floor. Somebody might step on him. But in the tub, I know he's safe. Next, I take the rocks out of the bowl, wash them. The last thing I do is wash the bowl itself. I really scrub it. I even rinse it 2 or 3 times to make sure all the soap is out. When I'm done with that, I put the rocks back and fill it up with just enough right amount of water. After I put Dribble back in his bowl, I feed him. Usually he goes right to sleep on his favorite rock. I guess running around the bathtub really makes my turtle tired. Today, I finished with Dribble just in time. My mother was rushing and mumbling about getting us to Dr. Brown's office in time for our appointment. When we were outside, we took a crosstown bus. Then we walked a few blocks to his office. As soon as the nurse saw Fudge, she said, "How's my favorite patient?" She gave him a hug and a little book to read. To me, she said, "Good morning, Peter." It burns me up the way people treat Fudge. He's not so special. He's little, that's all. But someday he's going to be 9 years old too. I can't wait until that he is. Then he'll know there's nothing so great about him after all. Soon the nurse said, "Fudge, Dr. Brown is ready for you. Come with me now." Fudge took the nurse's hand. Dr. Brown has this rule about mothers in the examining room with kids. They are not allowed. Mothers are big problems, Dr. Brown told me once, and I agreed. I looked through the National Geographic magazine while I waited. After a few minutes, the nurse came out and whispered something to my mother. I looked up, wondering what the big secret was. Then my mother said, "Peter, Dr. Brown would like you to help him with Fudge." "Help him?" I said, "I'm no dentist." The nurse said, "Peter, dear, if you'll just come with me, I'm sure everything will work out just fine." So I went with the nurse. "What do I have to do?" I asked her. "Oh, not much. Dr. Brown just wants you to show Fudge how you open your mouth and how he checks your teeth." What do I have to do that for?" I asked. "I don't need a checkup yet. I just had one last month." "Your brother won't open his mouth this morning," the nurse whispered. "Oh, he won't," I whispered back. "No, he won't," she said again. I thought that was pretty funny. I never considered refusing to open my mouth at the dentist office. When he says open, I open. When I reached the examining room, Fudge was sitting in the big chair. He had a towel around his neck, and he looked all ready for action. Mr. Brown was showing him lots of little things and explaining what each one does. Fudge kept nodding, but he wouldn't open his mouth. "Ah, Peter," said Dr. Brown. when he saw me. Would you open your mouth so I can count your teeth? That's what he tells the little kids he's doing, counting his teeth. Little kids believe anything. I went along with Dr. Brown's joke. I opened my mouth very wide, much wider than when I'm a real patient. He put his mirror in and wonderful teeth, just beautiful, regular chip off the old block. Such a shame your brother can't open his mouth the way you do. Can so, said Fudge. No, Dr. Brown told him, you can't open your mouth nearly as good as Peter can. Can so, see? Fudge opened his mouth. No, I'm sorry, Fudge, Dr. Brown said. It's still not as good as Peter. So Fudge opened his mouth really wide. Count teeth, he said. Count Fudgy's teeth. Well, Dr. Brown pretended to think about it. Count! Fudgy screamed. Well, Dr. Brown said again, scratching his head. I guess as long as you're here, I might as well count your teeth. So he checked Fudge's mouth, and then when he was through, Fudge said, see, just like you, Peter. Yes, said Dr. Brown, smiling. I can see that. You're just like Peter. He gave me a wink. I liked the way Dr. Brown tricked Fudge into opening his mouth, so that when he was through examining him, I whispered, couldn't you make Fudge some false teeth until his grown-up teeth come in? No, he'll have to wait, Dr. Brown said. But he looks like he has fangs, I told him. You better not say that in front of your mother, Dr. Brown said. I know, she's not too big on fangs. Dr. Brown thanked me for helping him. My mother made another appointment for Fudge. The nurse kissed my brother goodbye, and we left. That wasn't so bad, was it, Peter? My mother said. It could have been worse, I admitted. We headed to Bloomingdale's, where we get our new shoes, and there are 5 salesmen in the children's shoe department. 2 of them my mother doesn't like. She thinks they don't measure the feet carefully. That's all they care about is selling shoes, even if they don't have the right sizes in stock. The other ones my mother thinks are okay, but there's one she likes a lot. His name is Mr. Berman. I like him too because he's funny. He usually makes believe that the right shoe goes on the left foot, or that Fudge's shoes are really for me. Anyway, Mr. Berman waits on us. Buying shoes is almost fun. Today, Mr. Berman spotted us right away. He always remembered our name. Well, if it isn't Hatcher Boys, he said. In the flesh, I told him. Fudge opened his mouth to Mr. Berman. See, all gone. His teeth? My mother explained to Mr. Berman. He knocked out the 2 top front teeth. Well, congratulations, said Mr. Berman. That calls for a celebration. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out 2 lollipops. He handed one to me and one to Fudge. Ooh, Fudge said, lolly. Mine was root beer flavored. I hate root beer, but I thanked Mr. Berman anyways. I'll save it for later, after lunch, I told him, handing it to my mother. She put it into her purse. Fudge got a lemon lolly. He ripped off the paper and started sucking on it right away. Now then, what'll it be, boys? Mr. Berman asked. My mother answered, brown and white saddles for Fudge and loafers for Peter. Okay, Peter, let's see those feet. How those feet have grown. I slipped out of my old shoes and stood up. I stuck my left foot into Mr. Berman's foot measure. Then he turned it around, and I put my right foot in it. Whew, that's another reason why my mother thinks Mr. Berman's good at selling shoes. He measures both feet. Some other salesmen only measure one. My mother says feet can be different sizes, even if they're the same person. And it is important to make sure that the size fits the biggest foot. The shoe fits the biggest foot. What color loafers, Peter? Mr. Berman asked. Brown, I said, same as my old ones. When Mr. Berman went to the back to look for shoes for me, my mother noticed a hole in the toe of my sock. Oh, Peter, why didn't you tell me you had a hole in your sock? I didn't know I had one, I said. Oh, I'm so embarrassed. It's my sock, Mom. Why should you be embarrassed? I asked. Well, it looks terrible. I mean, come to shopping with shoes with a hole in your sock? That's just awful. Can't you hide it a little? Well, where should I hide it? Try to get the hole between your toes so it doesn't show, my mother said. So I wiggled my sock around trying to rearrange my hole. My mother sure worries about silly things. Mr. Berman came out with 2 pairs of loafers. He likes to try different sizes to make sure I'm getting the right one. One pair was much too big, the other pair was just fine. Wear or wrap? Mr. Berman asked my mother. Wrap, please, she said. We'll wear the old ones home. I have never been allowed to wear new shoes home from the store. Don't ask me why, but my mother always has the new pair wrapped up so I can't wear them until the next day. When I was finished, Mr. Berman untied Fudgy's shoes and measured his feet. Brown and white saddle shoes, my mother reminded him. Mr. Berman went to the back and returned with 2 shoes. But when he opened the first box, Fudge saw the saddle shoes. He said, "No." "No what?" my mother asked him. "No shoes," Fudgy said. He started kicking his feet. "Don't be silly, Fudgy. You need new shoes," my mother told him. "No, no, no," he hollered. Everybody in the shoe department looked over at us. "Here's the perfect size," Mr. Berman told Fudgy. "Hold up one shoe. Wait till you see how nice these shoes will feel." Fudgy kicked some more. It was impossible for Mr. Berman to get the shoes on his feet, and he screamed, "No shoes! No! No! No!" My mother grabbed a hold of him, but he was already swinging around all around. He managed to give Mr. Berman a good kick in the face. Lucky for him, Fudgy only had on his socks. "Now look, Fudge," my mother said. "You must get new shoes. Your old ones are too small. What kind do you want?" I don't know why my mother bothered to talk to him like that, like he was a regular person. But when Fudge gets himself into a temper tantrum, he doesn't listen to anything. By the time he had thrown himself on the floor, where he was beating his fist against the rug, "What kind do you want, Fudge? Because we're not leaving here until you get some new shoes," my mother said, like she meant it. I figured, we'll be there the rest of the day, or maybe the week. How could my mother have been embarrassed over a little hole in my sock and then act like nothing much was happening when the other son was on the floor yelling, screaming, and carrying on? "I'm going to count to 3, my mother told Fudge, "and then I want you to tell me which shoes you want. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Fudgy sat up. "Like Pita's," he said. I smiled. I guess the kid really does look up to me. He even wants to wear the same kinds of shoes. But everybody knows you can't buy loafers for such a little guy. "They don't come in your size," Mr. Berman told Fudge. "Yes, yes, yes, like Pita's," Fudge hollered. Mr. Berman held up his hands and looked at my mother as if to say, "I give up." But my mother said, "I have an idea." She motioned for me and Mr. Berman to come closer. I had a feeling I wasn't going to like her idea, but I listened anyways. "I think we have to play a little joke on Fudge," she said. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Well, suppose Mr. Berman brings out a pair of saddle shoes in your size and—" "Oh, no," I said. "No, you're not going to get me to wear saddle shoes. Never." "Let me finish," my mother said. "Mr. Berman can bring them out to you and try them on, and then Fudge will get the idea that you're getting, but then we'll leave and we'll take only the loafers." "That's mean," I said. "You're taking advantage of him." "Since when do you worry about that?" my mother asked. "Since now." "Look, Peter," my mother said, checking her watch. "It's 12 o'clock. I'm starved." "Me too," I said. "Well, then if you ever want to get something lunch, let's try my idea." Okay, I said. I sat back in my chair while Mr. Berman hurried to the stockroom again. Fudge looked at me from his position on the floor. "Like Pita's," he said. "Yeah, sure, Fudge," I told him. Mr. Berman came back with a pair of brown and white saddle shoes my size. I tried them on. Did they look ugly? "See, Peter has nice saddle shoes," my mother said. "Now Fudgy tries on a nice pair of saddle shoes." Fudge let Mr. Berman get him into his new pair of shoes. "See," he said. "See, like Pita's." He held up his foot. "That's right, Fudge." I said, "Just like mine. You can sure fool little kids easy." Wear or wrap? Said Mr. Berman to my mother, while Fudge was walking around in his new shoes. Wrap, of course, she said. I wonder what my mother would tell Fudge tomorrow when I wore my new loafers. Oh well, that really wasn't my worry. It was her idea. When Fudge was back in the old shoes and our packages were ready, Mr. Berman gave my brother a striped balloon. He offered for me one too, but I refused. How could he think a person in 4th grade might want a shoe store balloon? That wasn't so terrible, was it, Peter? My mother said as we left the store. It wasn't. It wasn't? I asked. Well, it could have been worse, my mother said. I suppose, I answered. We went to Hamburger Heaven for lunch. We sat in the booth. Fudge tossed his balloon around while my mother ordered for him and herself. I ordered my own lunch, a hamburger with everything on it and a chocolate milkshake. Fudge was getting a kitty special, meaning a hamburger without a roll and some mashed potatoes and a side order of green peas. When our lunch was served, my mother cut up Fudgy's hamburger into tiny pieces, and he shoved them into his mouth with his fingers. Then she handed him a spoon and told him to eat the mashed potatoes, but instead of eating the mashed potatoes, he smeared them on the wall. See? He said. I thought he told me he wouldn't behave like this anymore, I said to my mother. Fudgy, that's naughty. You stop that right now, my mother said. But Fudge sang, Eat it or wear it, he said, and dumped the whole dish of peas over his head. I laughed. I couldn't help it. He looked so silly with peas falling from his hair. And when I eat and laugh at the same time, I choke. So I choked on my pickle, and my mother had to whack me on the back, which gave Fudge another chance to spread mashed potatoes over the wall. That's when the waitress asked my mother, did we want anything else? Oh, no, thank you, my mother said. We have more than enough now. She wiped off the wall with her napkin and told Fudge he was very naughty. Not me, Fudge said. Not me. Yes, you, my mother told him. Why can't you eat like Peter? See how nice Peter eats? Fudge didn't say anything. He just stuck his fork into the balloon and it popped, and he screamed. More gone. Want more balloon, more? Shut up, I told him. Can't you ever act human? That's enough, Peter, my mother said. She should have slugged him. That would teach my little brother of mine how to behave in Hamburger Heaven. We took the cab home. Fudge fell asleep on the way. He had fingers in his mouth and made that slurpy noise. My mother whispered to me, Our day wasn't that bad, was it, Peter? I didn't answer. I just looked out the taxi window and decided that I would never spend a day with Farley Drexel Hatcher again.